I just like the overall look of the group at halftime. We acknowledged where we were. We acknowledged we needed some plays, man, to break this thing open. And I had a bunch of guys that wanted to be the reason why we were successful.
Pressure, passes high, and intercepted by Beanie Bishop.
Good morning, everybody. It is a Victory Tuesday. The Steelers are 6-2. It wasn't a thing of beauty. It also wasn't as ugly as some wins over not great teams, as we've kind of become accustomed to seeing here. Steelers 0 for 4 in the red zone. Ugh. Even still, Steelers offense racked up 426 yards, scored on 5 of the 9 drives. Rush defense, bad. 6.3 yards per rush given up. 157 overall. Tyrone Tracy had the game of his life. That can't happen. Gave up a 3rd and 16 on the drive that was capped off by the 45-yard Tracy run. That can't happen. But while the Steelers in the red zone at times were ugly, it still looked worlds better than it has the last couple of years offensively. And even though the defense at times bled yards, especially, my God, in the running game, they still got 4 sacks combined from T.J. Watt and Alex Highsmith, including a forced fumble by Watt. And they had the interception from Beanie Bishop. Not to mention the Calvin Austin punt return for a touchdown. So while it wasn't necessarily, Dorin, awe-inspiring, every single unit made a big play or two to help win this game. And I say it all the time, we're not going to apologize for victories on this here radio program. An ugly win is better than a loss under any circumstances.
I think we got to look into the details a little bit of the ugly win. I think that's kind of where it's at. And we, were preaching yesterday about the consistency that this team needs to have, and at least the foundation from last week and continuing that last night. And I think that they did at the end of the day. If you look into the details, you can make excuses about the Broderick Jones penalty. You can make excuses about George Pickens not getting his foot down, and those 2 touchdowns could be, it could have looked aesthetically different for the numbers in the win and loss column. But if you really look into the details, especially on offense, and defense too, it looked almost the same as it did last week. You did what you needed to do to a bad team. I know that the score was close, but at the end of the day, to me, it wasn't really fairly close. Like, the Steelers looked like a better football team, in my opinion. And if you just go through the box score, and I'm not a big stat guy, but it's almost identical as last week. I mean, you got Najee over 100 yards. You have Jaylen Warren, 46 yards rushing. You have Russell Wilson, 278 and a touchdown passing. You have George Pickens, 74 yards. Van Jefferson, a back-to-back game, 62 yards receiving. Calvin Austin, obviously the punt return, 54 yards receiving. Darnell Washington, 29 yards receiving. Pat Freiermuth, 19. Najee Harris, 17. Jaylen Warren, 13. Michael Pruitt, 10. Like, Russell Wilson is elevating everybody. And that's what you wanted to really see. You kind of had a good feeling that they were going to win this football game, even going into it. I don't think anybody was really stressing about it. It didn't look great. The score it looks a lot closer than it really was. But these things right here tell the true story, I believe, in my opinion, about where the Steelers are at and what they can do with Russell Wilson.
It's why you say things like the stats don't always matter. Sometimes they paint a perfect picture. The stats you just read off there, they do. They scored 19 points offensively. That's not going to excite anybody, but if you watch the game, you see it's just worlds different than it's been. Mm-hmm. Worlds different. I thought Arthur Smith, and we'll get into the details as we break this thing down segment by segment, I thought Arthur Smith called a great game. I tweeted that, and it was halftime, and people blew me up. Well, only 9 points. Okay, well, Arthur Smith didn't call the, hey, Broderick, grab his face mask play. Mm-hmm. He didn't call the, hey, George Pickens, don't get your second foot down play. He called touchdown plays. I spit everywhere just there like Bill Cowher. I'm fired up. And you know what? His players made mistakes. Like, if the Steelers had lost this game, Mike Tomlin was going to get criticized, probably because the defense was bleeding. But I thought a lot of the issues weren't coaching related. I thought the problems were player related. Broderick Jones, George Pickens. Mm-hmm. And that's maybe not even his fault, just kind of a fluky deal there. Sometimes players don't make plays. I thought to come out and sort of tempo them was really smart.
Yes.
People were blowing me up. Arthur's not calling a good game. He's still running the ball way too much on first down. Najee Harris through the first half was averaging 8 yards a carry.
Right.
They were averaging 7 yards a carry and had over 100 rushing yards at the half. If he's calling first down runs, good. So I thought he did a good job. I thought in the second half, when it became butt clench time, that's when they started uncorking the play action deep balls, and Russ was mostly on point. And so while the stats would say, oh, they scored 19 points offensively, you want more, well, it looked better than the 19 points, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it absolutely did. I just feel like this is a complete football team, and I understand it's the Giants, and I understand last week is the Jets, but you have to go in there and make sure that you're getting better week to week. And now you head into the bye week in 6-2. Like, would you rather be? And we talked about this a little bit before the show. Would you rather be the Ravens right now, and being like, man,
exactly,
man, how did we lose that game? How did we lose that game? But the Steelers found a way to win this football game against a bad football team, but also detail-wise doing it the same way you did it last week. And I think that is very significant. I think that's very significant moving forward.
Couple things. You're right. You win, it counts as a dub. It doesn't matter what it looks like at the end of the year. The Ravens have two of the worst losses in the NFL this season. They had a 10-point lead at home against Las Vegas, and they blow it. And then they lose to the hapless Browns and drop what could have been a touchdown because it got lost in the sun, and then an interception that would have closed the game. So they got two bad losses. Cincinnati's doing math right now. Joe Burrow after the game, well, you win 7 out of 9. That's going to get you 10. That's probably going to get you in the playoffs. Oh, yeah, that's doable. And his voice kind of cracked. Well, if you don't lose at home to New England, or, hey, you win a home game this year, they're 0-4, guess what? You're still alive in this thing, and you're not doing math after the game. They haven't. Kansas City is unblemished. Every other team in the NFL's got a loss or two that you'd go, why? That shouldn't have happened. The Steelers last year got blowed out by Houston. The Steelers last year got blowed out by Indianapolis. The Steelers' 2 losses this year, 1-score games, and only one of their victories, they won by 7 points or fewer. That's growth. When they were losing last year, at times, they were getting their doors blown off. We haven't seen that happen once this year. And every time, seemingly, they won last season. Except for, I guess, the Cincinnati game with Mason Rudolph. It was skinnier teeth. It was hold on to your butts. And it really hasn't been like that. The Giants weren't going to win that game.
No.
I was not nervous at all.
Not
the
one
Steelers' defense had not played great all night. But the Giants needed to score a touchdown and get a 2-point conversion at the end of the game. And you've got T.J. Watt, and you've got Alex Highsmith, and you've got Minka, and you've got Elliott, you've got Queen, and you've got Beanie Bishop. I just didn't feel like it was ever in danger. This is a team that, okay, it's not the most satisfying 6-2 in the world. This is a good, complete football team. And you don't always have to apologize for that. The people tweeting last night, and I saw a few. I don't want to straw man this. I saw a few. It's not a great 6-2 team. Shut it. Shut your mouth. Not a good 6-2 football team. Get out of here. They're incredibly impressive overall as a team. They're not perfect in any one area, but special teams is great. The defense is going to have its playmakers make plays, and offensively, it's still a work in progress. It's game 2 for your starting quarterback. They're playing pretty well on that side of the ball.
Are they good enough, or can they be good enough? Like, from what you see right now, can you see them being good enough? Or are they good enough in your mind right now?
The offensive line is something that concerns me, but you're going to get Zach Frazier back. And now, because you've had so many injuries, organically you've kind of developed this depth now. You're not going to make a trade for somebody at the deadline to help your offensive line. They're just not going to do that. So that gives me pause, yeah, for sure. Because if you do play Kansas City in the playoffs, well, they can get after the passer, and that's a good defense. You play Buffalo, well, Gregory Rousseau, he's pretty good, and especially against one Broderick Jones. So that scares me. But while they're not the best team in the NFL, I think you can make a compelling and reasonable case that they're the most complete team in the NFL.
Balance, for sure.
Yes, balance is probably the word. Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Yeah. No, I think that they're very balanced, and I think that they're just getting started. I mean, my thing, and I can't harp on this enough, is like, can you do what you did last week? And I know they didn't score 37 points, but on offense and on defense, they did the things that they did last week against a bad football team 2 weeks in a row. That's to me is taking care of your business and getting better. Russell Wilson has elevated this offense to everybody having high productive days. And whenever you have everybody chipping in like that, that means that you can beat teams different ways on offense. On defense, you still have your Alex Highsmith, 2 sacks. TJ Watt, a strip sack and a sack. 2 sacks, right? You had an interception. So they've played very, very complete football. And then you talked about the special teams. They played very complete football for the last 2 weeks that going into the bye week, if I'm Mike Tomlin, I'm feeling pretty good. I'm not going to obviously say that, but I'm feeling pretty good where my team's at, and I think that we can only get better.
It's almost the perfect way to win going into the bye. If the Pickens touchdowns stand, you win this thing going away, and the momentum's great, and you're feeling awesome. Mm-hmm. But now the rush defense, unacceptable. Have not been run on all year. 150 yards to that guy having a career game can't happen, but I have a hard time evaluating the defense because they gave up fewer than 20, and they had 4 sacks, and they had 2 takeaways, like you said, and that's kind of the name of the game in the NFL in 2024. Right. If the Giants are going to be on the field that much offensively, you're going to trust that your guys are going to get it done. So you've got stuff to work on. I like that going into the bye. You weren't perfect on either side of the ball. You can probably say you're perfect on special teams almost every week now. Danny Smith's doing a great job, but you got stuff to work on. I like that. I think the defense is going to be pissed off for 2 weeks that they gave up 150 yards on the ground.
Absolutely.
And we'll get into this full form a little bit later on in the show. Guys, you got to credit Mike Tomlin. When Mike Tomlin loses this game, he gets raked over the coals. They're 6-2. Vegas didn't see it coming. They were a last-place team, according to a lot of those people out there in the West that build all those beautiful mansions out there and those beautiful hotels and the casinos. They know what they're talking about. They had the Steelers in last place this year.
Yep.
Way more likely they finished in last than in first. They're in first place by their lonesome right now. You can lament the slow starts. Fair enough. They have the best second half point differential in the NFL. That's coaching adjustments. That's their physicality. I think that plays a role in it. But that's adjustments. Again, the defense wasn't perfect or great last night, apart from a few moments. But you saw some coaching adjustment. Mike Tomlin flip-flopping T.J. Watt and Alex Highsmith at times. I'm not sure it worked all the time, but I think it paid dividends at the end of the game. They blitzed, I have to think, I don't have the percentages, more in this game than they had in any other game this year.
Yep, bringing more pressure for sure.
Which, again, the dam broke in the second half. So Mike Tomlin on the whole's got his team in first place and in the 3rd spot in the AFC standings as we sit right now. And it is the mark of a good coaching staff. There's no other way to slice it that you dominate the way they've dominated in the second half of these games this year. Like, you can't tell me that's an accident. It's too big of a sample size now. It happens every week. That's coaching.